The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the alien transport vessel Skyward Hope. Captain Vex stood on the bridge, his blue-scaled hands gripping the command rail as warning lights bathed the control room in red. 3 sleek Hunter ships had appeared from nowhere, their black hulls gleaming like predators in the starlight. They came out of the asteroid field, reported his second-in-command Kira. Her voice carried the tension that filled the entire bridge. Our sensors didn't detect them until they were already in position. The Hunter ships moved with deadly precision, forming a triangle around the transport. Each vessel was half the size of the Skyward Hope, but their reputation made them far more dangerous than their size suggested. These were the ships that had been terrorizing trade routes for months, capturing alien vessels and taking their crews prisoner. "Communication incoming," announced the ship's AI. A harsh voice crackled through the speakers. "Alien transport, you are now under our control. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel." Captain Vex looked around his bridge crew. 43 souls aboard his ship, all depending on his next decision. The transport carried no weapons, only cargo and passengers traveling between worlds. They were merchants, families, and workers seeking better lives among the stars. "Sir, what are your orders?" Kira asked quietly. Before Vex could respond, the ship shuddered as tractor beams locked onto their hull. The Hunter ships were pulling them toward the largest vessel, where a docking bay waited like an open mouth. Emergency systems activated throughout the transport, sealing bulkheads and securing loose cargo. "We have no choice," Vex said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Signal our surrender. Tell the crew to remain calm and follow all orders." The docking process was swift and efficient. The Hunters had clearly done this many times before. As the Skyward Hope was drawn into the cargo bay, Vex could see armed figures waiting in the shadows. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets, but their weapons were clearly visible. A loud clang echoed through the ship as magnetic clamps secured their vessel. The Hunter ship's atmosphere rushed into the bay, and boarding ramps extended toward the transport's airlocks. Within minutes, armed soldiers in black armor stormed aboard. "All crew members to the main cargo hold," commanded the lead soldier through a voice modifier. "Move quickly and keep your hands visible." The crew of the Skyward Hope was herded into the transport's largest room like frightened animals. Children cried while their parents tried to comfort them. The elderly moved slowly, supported by younger family members. Everyone's eyes showed the same fear. Captain Vex was separated from his crew and brought to face the Hunter commander. The human stood tall in his dark armor, his helmet removed to reveal a scarred face and cold eyes. This was Commander Blake, whose name was whispered in fear across the galaxy. "Another successful hunt," Blake said with satisfaction. "Your species makes excellent workers in the mining colonies. The market for alien labor is quite profitable these days." "We are peaceful traders," Vex protested. "We have done nothing to deserve this treatment." Blake laughed harshly. "Deserve? You aliens think you deserve something? You entered our space, you use our trade routes, and you compete with human interests. This is what you deserve." The Hunter commander walked around Vex, studying him like a specimen. "Your people will work in the deep mines until they die. The children will be trained as servants, the elderly." He shrugged. "They won't survive the journey anyway." As Blake spoke, more Hunter ships appeared on the display screens. The operation was larger than anyone had imagined. Dozens of vessels formed a massive fleet, each one carrying captured aliens from across the sector. The sight filled everyone with despair. "Process them," Blake ordered his soldiers. "Standard conditioning procedures. I want them ready for transport within 6 hours." The soldiers began separating families, using electronic collars to mark each prisoner. The devices would track their location and deliver punishment for disobedience. Children were torn from their parents' arms despite desperate pleas. As the chaos unfolded, none of the Hunters noticed the small escape pod that had launched from the Skyward Hope just before capture. The tiny vessel drifted silently through the asteroid field, its emergency beacon transmitting a desperate message into the void. The pod carried the ship's communications officer, who had managed to send a distress signal before the transport was taken. The message traveled through subspace, reaching distant ears that might offer hope. But hope seemed impossible as the Skyward Hope was emptied of its cargo and crew. The hunter fleet prepared to move to their next target, leaving nothing but empty space and broken dreams in their wake. The trap had been perfect, the capture complete. Yet somewhere in the darkness between stars, help was already on its way. The distress call, 770 words. Tom Richards sat in his small cargo hauler, Lucky Strike, sipping coffee from a dented metal cup. The ship wasn't much to look at. Old, patched in dozens of places and held together by hope and spare parts. But it was his, and it had served him well during 15 years of independent trading. The communication console beeped softly, indicating an incoming message. Tom almost ignored it, thinking it was another advertisement from a trade station. But something about the weak signal caught his attention. He leaned forward and activated the receiver. Static filled the cabin, followed by a desperate voice speaking in broken universal standard. Please, anyone. Hunter ships. Families taken. Coordinates follow. Please help us. Tom's blood ran cold. He had heard stories about the hunter fleets, but most traders thought they were just rumors. Pirates and raiders were common enough, but organized fleets capturing entire ships? That seemed too large-scale to be real. The message repeated twice more before cutting off. Tom recorded the coordinates and ran them through his navigation system. The location was only 6 hours away at maximum burn, deep in the asteroid field, where few legitimate traders ventured. He stared at the coordinates for a long time. Getting involved with hunters would be suicide for a single ship. His cargo hauler had basic shields and no weapons beyond a small mining laser. Against a fleet of military vessels, he would last about 30 seconds. But the voice in the message had sounded so desperate, so afraid. Tom remembered his own daughter Lisa, who lived on Earth with her mother. If she were trapped somewhere, calling for help, he would want someone to answer. Damn my stupid conscience, he muttered, changing course toward the coordinates. The journey took him deeper into the asteroid field than he had ever traveled. His sensors painted the surrounding space in shades of danger. Massive rocks tumbling through the void, radiation pockets and debris from old mining operations. It was the perfect place for hunters to hide. As he approached the coordinates, Tom activated every stealth system his old ship possessed. The Lucky Strike might be ancient, but previous owners had installed some interesting modifications. He powered down non-essential systems and drifted like another piece of space junk. What he saw through his viewports made his stomach turn. A massive hunter fleet floated among the asteroids, dozens of black ships arranged in perfect formation. At the center sat a command vessel the size of a small station, its hull bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Tom counted at least 30 hunter ships, plus support vessels and what looked like prison transports. This wasn't just a raiding party, it was a full military operation. The scale was far beyond anything he had imagined. Through his long-range sensors, he detected multiple alien ships held in tractor beams. The vessels showed signs of damage, their hulls scarred and their systems offline. Some looked like they had been captured recently, while others appeared to have been held for weeks. Moving carefully through the asteroid field, Tom positioned his ship where he could observe without being detected. He activated his ship's recording systems and began documenting everything he saw. If he couldn't help directly, at least he could gather evidence. The hunters were processing their captives with military efficiency. Shuttles moved between ships, transferring prisoners to the larger vessels. Tom watched in horror as families were separated and loaded onto different transports like cargo. Through his enhanced sensors, he could see aliens of dozens of species being herded into holding cells. There were the blue-scaled people he recognized as traders from the Outer Rim, the tall gray beings from the core worlds, and many others he couldn't identify. All of them looked terrified. This is bigger than anyone knows, Tom whispered to himself. He spent hours recording the fleet's movements and ship configurations. The hunters operated with precision that suggested military training. Their formation was defensive but mobile, ready to scatter if threatened by superior forces. As dawn Approached in local time, Tom made his decision. He couldn't take on the entire fleet alone, but he could get word to people who could help. The evidence he had gathered would prove the scope of the threat and hopefully motivate someone with real power to act. But as he prepared to leave, his sensors detected something new. A small escape pod drifted near his position, its occupant barely alive. Without thinking, Tom activated his tractor beam and pulled the pod into his cargo bay. The alien inside was unconscious but breathing. He wore the uniform of a transport ship officer, and his identification marked him as a communications specialist. This must be the person who sent the distress call. Tom activated his ship's medical systems and began treating the alien's injuries. As he worked, he made plans. Getting this survivor to safety was now his top priority, but he wouldn't stop there. The evidence he had gathered needed to reach the right people. The hunter fleet thought they were invisible, operating in the shadows, where no one would find them. But now someone knew their secret, and Tom Richards was determined to make sure the galaxy learned the truth. The evidence. The nearest station was Haven Point, a trading hub built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Tom's ship limped into the docking bay 12 hours after leaving the hunter fleet, his fuel reserves nearly empty and his passenger still unconscious in the medical bay. Station security met him at the airlock, their scanners detecting the alien, life signs aboard his ship. "State your business, Captain Richards," said the lead officer, a woman Tom recognized from previous visits. "Medical emergency," Tom replied quickly. "I found a survivor from a ship attack. He needs immediate treatment." The medical team took the alien communications officer to the station hospital, while Tom uploaded his sensor recordings to a secure data storage unit. The evidence was too important to risk losing, but he knew that getting people to believe it would be another challenge entirely. Tom made his way to the station commander's office carrying a copy of his recordings. Commander Pike was an old spacer who had seen everything the galaxy could throw at a person. If anyone would take the threat seriously, it would be him. "Tom Richards," Pike said with a slight smile. "Haven't seen you in months. What brings you to my office instead of the trading floor?" "Something big, Commander. Bigger than anything we've seen before." Tom placed the datapad on Pike's desk. "I found a hunter fleet, not just a few raiders, a full military operation with dozens of ships." Pike's expression grew serious as he reviewed the recordings. The images spoke for themselves: massive ships, organized formations, and clear evidence of systematic alien capture and imprisonment. The scope was staggering. "My God," Pike whispered. "How many prisoners?" "Hundreds, maybe thousands. They're running it like a business, Commander, capturing entire ships, processing the crews, and shipping them off to who knows where." Tom leaned forward. "This isn't random piracy. It's organized, well-funded, and completely ruthless." Pike studied the data for several minutes, his face growing darker with each image. "Do you know who's running this operation?" "The survivor might know more when he wakes up. But, Commander, this is just one fleet. There could be others operating in different sectors." Tom's voice carried the weight of his discovery. "We need to warn people. Every alien ship traveling through this region is at risk." The commander stood and walked to his viewport, looking out at the ships docked around Haven Point. Many of them carried alien crews or passengers, all unaware of the danger lurking in the asteroid fields. "I'll send warnings to all nearby systems," Pike decided. "But Tom, we need more than sensor recordings. We need proof that will make the authorities take action." "What kind of proof?" Pike turned back to face him. "We need to rescue some of those prisoners, living witnesses who can testify about what happened to them. Without that, this could be dismissed as fabricated evidence." Tom felt his stomach drop. "You're talking about attacking a military fleet with superior numbers and firepower. That's a suicide mission." "Not attacking," Pike corrected. "Rescuing. There's a difference." He activated his communication system. "I'm calling in some favors. There are people who owe me. People with the right kind of ships and experience." Over. The next few hours, Haven Point became a hub of quiet activity. Retired military officers, independent contractors, and experienced traders gathered in small groups, discussing options and possibilities. Word spread carefully through secure channels. Meanwhile, the alien survivor regained consciousness in the medical bay. His name was Nix, and his story confirmed Tom's worst fears. The hunters had been operating for months, capturing ships across multiple sectors. The Skyward Hope was just their latest victim. They have processing centers, Nix explained in his broken universal standard. Places where they sort prisoners by species and skill. The strong ones go to mining colonies. The skilled ones become servants. The weak ones. He couldn't finish the sentence. Tom recorded Nix's testimony, adding it to the growing file of evidence. But even as the proof mounted, he knew that documentation alone wouldn't save the hundreds of aliens still trapped in the Hunter fleet. Commander Pike returned with news of his recruitment efforts. "I've got 12 ships willing to help, and crews. With combat experience, it's not a lot, but it might be enough for a rescue mission." "What's the plan?" Tom asked. "Hit them fast and hard, extract as many prisoners as possible, then scatter before they can organize a response." Pike pulled up a tactical display. "Your recordings show weak points in their formation. If we can exploit those..." Tom looked at the display, his mind racing through possibilities and dangers. The odds were terrible, the risks enormous. But somewhere in that fleet, families were being torn apart, and innocent people were suffering. "I'm in," he said quietly. Pike nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that. We'll need someone who knows the layout of their fleet, and you're the only one who's seen it up close." As preparations began around them, Tom thought about his daughter Lisa back on Earth. He might not survive what was coming, but at least she would grow up in a galaxy where people stood up for each other when it mattered most. The plan, 770 words. The meeting room at Haven Point buzzed with tension as 12 ship captains gathered around a holographic display. Tom looked at the faces around the table. Some he recognized as traitors like himself. Others were clearly former military personnel. All of them had one thing in common. They had answered the call to help. Commander Pike stood at the head of the table, his weathered face serious as he outlined the situation. "The Hunter fleet is holding position in Grid Sector 779. They've got approximately 40 ships, including prison transports and support vessels." Captain Miller, a former naval officer, leaned forward. "What about their defenses? Are we looking at military-grade weapons?" "Better than military-grade," Tom replied, calling up his sensor recordings. "These aren't converted civilian ships, they're purpose-built hunters with advanced shields and weapon systems. They've been planning this operation for a long time." Holographic display showed the fleet's formation in detail. The command ship sat at the center, surrounded by escort vessels in a defensive pattern. The prison transports were positioned at the rear, protected by layers of armed ships. "Our advantage is surprise," Pike continued. "They think they're hidden, so they won't be expecting an attack. But we'll only get one chance at this." Captain Ross, who commanded a fast courier ship, studied the display carefully. "What's the primary objective? Do we try to destroy the fleet or focus on prisoner rescue?" "Rescue," Pike said firmly. "Our goal is to get as many prisoners out as possible. We're not equipped to take on their entire fleet, and we don't need to. We just need to create enough chaos to extract people." Tom highlighted several points on the display. "The prison transports are here, here, and here. They're the least defended because the hunters don't expect them to be targeted. If we can disable their engines and beam people out..." "That's assuming the transports aren't booby-trapped," Miller interrupted. "Military prisoners are often kept in ships rigged to explode if rescue is attempted." "That's a risk we'll have to take," Pike acknowledged. "But based on what we know about their operation, they want to keep the prisoners alive. Dead slaves aren't profitable." The conversation turned to tactics and timing. The group decided on a three-pronged approach: a diversionary attack on the fleet's outer perimeter, a stealth insertion to disable the prison transports, and a rapid extraction of prisoners using the fastest ships. Tom would lead the stealth team, since he knew the fleet's layout better than anyone. His modified cargo hauler could slip past sensors more easily than military vessels. Captain Ross would handle prisoner extraction with her high-speed courier ship. What about after we get them out? Asked Captain Hayes, whose ship carried the most firepower in their small fleet. Where do we take hundreds of rescued prisoners? Pike had already considered this problem. Haven Point can handle immediate medical care and temporary housing. After that, we'll need to contact their home governments and arrange transportation. As the meeting continued, Tom felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. These people were risking their lives based on his discovery, trusting his sensor readings and judgment. If he was wrong about anything, people would die. The plan they developed was complex, but necessary. The diversionary attack would begin at the far edge of the Hunter Formation, drawing attention away from the prison transports. Meanwhile, Tom's team would move through the asteroid field, using the rocks as cover to reach the transport ships. Timing is everything, Pike emphasized. The diversion starts at exactly Oro 800 hours station time. That gives the stealth team 30 minutes to position themselves and disable the transports. Extraction begins at Oro 830, and everyone needs to be clear of the area by Oro 900. Captain Miller raised a concern that had been bothering Tom as well. What if they have reinforcements? Other hunter fleets that can respond to a distress call? Then we better be fast, Pike replied grimly. This is a one-shot operation. We get in, grab who we can, and get out before they know what hit them. The meeting broke up with each captain returning to prepare their ships and crews. Tom walked back to the Lucky Strike with a mixture of determination and fear. In 12 hours, they would attempt something that could either save hundreds of lives or get them all killed. Nix, the alien survivor, was waiting for him at the ship. The communications officer had insisted on joining the rescue mission despite his injuries. I know the transport layout, he explained. I can help you find the prisoners faster. Tom looked at the determined alien and nodded. Welcome to the team. As Haven Point prepared for the most dangerous mission in its history, Tom Richards checked his ship's systems one final time. Tomorrow, they would discover if courage and determination could overcome superior numbers and firepower. The Hunters had trapped hundreds of innocent aliens, confident in their power and invisibility. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated what humans would do when faced with injustice. The rescue Tom's hands gripped the controls of the Lucky Strike as he guided the ship through the treacherous asteroid field. Behind him, Nix monitored the sensors, his alien eyes perfectly adapted to reading the complex displays. The communication channel crackled softly with position reports from the other rescue ships. Target formation in sight, whispered Captain Miller over the comm. His ship, along with two others, had positioned themselves at the edge of the Hunter fleet's perimeter. Beginning diversionary attack in 60 seconds. Tom's stomach tightened as he maneuvered closer to the prison transports. The massive ships loomed ahead, their hulls scarred from countless operations. Through the viewports, he could see the faint glow of containment fields holding hundreds of prisoners. First transport is dead ahead, Nix reported quietly. I can see the holding bays from here. They're packed with people from dozens of different species. The diversionary attack began right on schedule. Explosions flashed at the far edge of the Hunter Formation as Miller's team struck hard and fast. Alarms began wailing throughout the fleet, and Tom watched as escort ships peeled away from the prison transports to respond to the threat. It's working, Tom breathed. They're taking the bait. He activated the Lucky Strike's boarding systems and moved in close to the first transport. The ship's hull was pitted and worn, but the docking mechanisms were standard. Tom had done this kind of operation before, just never under such dangerous circumstances. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud. We're connected, Tom announced. Beginning boarding procedures. Nix led the way through the airlock, his knowledge of transport layouts proving invaluable. The corridors were dimly lit and filled with the sound of running footsteps as the transport's crew responded to the attack. Most of the guards had been pulled away to help with the fleet's defense. Holding Bay 7 is this way, Nix said, pointing, down a side corridor. That's where they keep the newest prisoners. They moved quickly through the ship, avoiding the few remaining guards. The Lucky Strike's stealth modifications had worked perfectly. The transport sensors hadn't detected the boarding action, But Tom knew their luck wouldn't last forever. The holding bay doors were secured with electronic locks, but Tom's cargo hauler carried equipment for dealing with such obstacles. A few minutes with a plasma cutter opened the way, and they rushed inside to find dozens of aliens crowded into the cramped space. "We're here to help," Tom called out in Universal Standard. "We're getting you out of here." The prisoners looked up with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Many were injured, all were terrified. Tom and Nix began organizing them for transport, prioritizing families with children and those who were most severely hurt. "How many can your ship carry?" Nix asked as they worked. 50 in the cargo bay, maybe 60 if we pack them tight," Tom replied. "It's not going to be comfortable, but it'll get them to safety." The evacuation proceeded smoothly until alarms began sounding throughout the transport. Someone had discovered the boarding action, and guards were rushing toward their position. Tom could hear boots pounding in the corridors outside. "Move faster," he urged the prisoners. "We need to get everyone to my ship now." The first group of rescued aliens was already aboard the Lucky Strike when the guards arrived. Tom found himself facing 3 armed humans in hunter uniforms, their weapons trained on him and the remaining prisoners. "Step away from the aliens," the lead guard commanded. "You're under arrest for interfering with lawful salvage operations." Tom almost laughed at the absurdity of calling kidnapping and slavery lawful salvage, but the weapons pointed at him were deadly serious. Behind him, Nix was helping an injured alien child toward the airlock. "I don't think so," Tom replied calmly. "These people are coming with me." The guard's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger, but before he could fire, an explosion rocked the transport. The diversionary attack had intensified, and the ship's lights flickered as power systems overloaded. In the confusion, Tom grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed the guards with foam, temporarily blinding them. "Run!" he shouted to the prisoners. The remaining aliens rushed toward the Lucky Strike as more explosions shook the transport. Tom and Nix covered their retreat, keeping the guards pinned down until everyone was aboard. "Sealing airlock," Tom announced, as he reached his ship's controls. "Disengaging docking clamps." The Lucky Strike pulled away from the transport just as hunter reinforcements arrived. Tom pushed his engines to maximum as weapon fire erupted around them. The old ship's shields flared under the assault, but held long enough for them to reach the cover of the asteroid field. "First transport successful," Tom reported over the comm. 62 prisoners extracted and en route to safety. Similar reports came in from the other rescue ships. Captain Ross had managed to extract 41 aliens from another transport, while a third team had rescued over 70. The operation was succeeding beyond their wildest hopes, but the hunter fleet was now fully alert and mobilizing for pursuit. The real test was just beginning. The chase commander Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship, his face twisted with rage, as damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. The surprise attack had caught them completely off guard, and the losses were mounting. 3 escort ships destroyed, 2 transports damaged, and over 200 prisoners missing. "How did they find us?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "This location was supposed to be secure." "Unknown, sir. The attack came from multiple vectors, suggesting coordinated planning. They knew exactly where to hit us." The officer paused, checking his displays. "Sir, we're tracking 12 ships fleeing the area. Mixed configuration. Cargo haulers, courier ships, and what looks like converted patrol boats." Blake studied the tactical display, his military training taking over from his anger. The rescue force was small but well organized. Someone with real experience had planned this operation. "Launch pursuit squadrons. I want those ships caught and destroyed. The prisoners they took are valuable merchandise." The hunter fleet split into pursuit groups, their faster vessels racing after the fleeing rescue ships. The asteroid field that had provided cover for the rescue now became a deadly maze as both sides maneuvered through the floating rocks. Tom pushed the Lucky Strike hard, her engines straining under the load of 62 refugees packed into every available space. Behind him, the prisoners huddled together in fear as weapons fire lit up the space around them. The ship's age showed in every creaking bulkhead and flickering display. "Hunter squadron closing on our position," Nix reported from the sensor station. 4 ships heavily armed. Tom watched his rear display as sleek hunter vessels closed the distance. The Lucky Strike was fast for a cargo hauler, but she couldn't outrun purpose-built warships. He needed another option. "Hold on, everyone," Tom announced. "This is going to get rough." He dove toward a cluster of large asteroids, using their mass to mask his ship's energy signature. The maneuver bought them precious seconds, but the hunters were experienced at this kind of pursuit. They spread out, cutting off escape routes. Weapon fire erupted around the Lucky Strike as the hunters opened up with everything they had. The ship's shields flared under the assault, their old generators struggling to maintain protection. Tom could smell burning circuits as systems overloaded. "Shields. At 30%, Nix called out. "We can't take much more of this." Tom gritted his teeth and pulled the ship into a tight spiral around a massive asteroid. The hunters followed, but their larger ships had trouble matching his maneuvers in the confined space. One of them clipped a rock outcropping, sending it spinning out of control, but the victory was short-lived. More hunter ships were converging on their position, and the Lucky Strike's shields were failing fast. Tom realized they wouldn't make it to Haven Point at this rate. Then Captain Miller's voice crackled over the comm. "All rescue ships, this is Hammer Leader. We're coming back for you." The diversionary force had regrouped and was racing back into the asteroid field. Tom watched in amazement as Miller's converted patrol boat dove into the pursuing hunters, guns blazing. The surprise counterattack caught the hunters off guard. "Focus fire on the lead hunter," Miller commanded. "Cover the transports." What followed was the most chaotic space battle Tom had ever witnessed. Ships darted between asteroids, using the rocks as weapons and shields. Explosions lit up the darkness as vessels on both sides took damage. The rescue force was outnumbered, but they fought with desperate courage. Captain Hayes, in his heavily armed freighter, took on 3 hunters simultaneously. His ship's hull was scarred by weapon hits, but his guns never stopped firing. "I've got your back, Tom," he called out. "Get those people to safety." The battle raged for 20 minutes before the hunters began to withdraw. They had lost 6 ships to the rescue force's 3, and their commander was calling for a strategic retreat. The prisoners were too scattered now to recapture efficiently. "All rescue ships, report status." Commander Pike's voice came over the comm from Haven Point. One by one, the ships checked in. Damages were heavy but not fatal. Most importantly, they had succeeded in rescuing over 300 prisoners from the Hunter fleet. Families had been reunited, and hundreds of aliens would live to see their homeworlds again. Tom looked back at the refugees crowded into his cargo bay. Children clung to their parents while adults tried to comfort the injured. Despite everything they had been through, there was hope in their eyes now. "Haven Point Control, this is Lucky Strike," Tom reported. "En route with 62 rescued prisoners. ETA 40 minutes. As the rescue fleet limped toward Haven Point, Tom thought about what they had accomplished. A small group of humans had taken on a military fleet and won, not through superior firepower, but through courage and determination to do what was right. Hunter fleet still existed, still posed a threat to innocent travelers. But their secret was out now, and the galaxy would be watching. More importantly, 300 aliens were free because humans had refused to look the other way when faced with injustice.